Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Adobe Live on a Wednesday to a masterclass. And as you can see, I'm completely alone, which is a new thing for me because today is going to be a little bit of a different stream. I decided because it's Pride Month and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, that I wanted to do something special and I wanted to talk to some people from the community and talk about my Pride shoots that I've done in the past. And I also thought to myself, well, I've done enough live streams to not need a host to talk about my work, which was a good idea a week ago. Yesterday, I realized that means I have to kind of talk to myself for 30 minutes. So I'm really hoping to see some people in the chat and you can ask questions. I have the chat open. So please, so I don't feel so alone, ask some questions. And just to explain a little bit the run of show of today, for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to be talking about Pride and the rainbow flag, and it's going to be a little bit of information, and you will see this year's Pride shoot that will also be on the Adobe website later on. And after that, Francesco is going to join me and we're going to talk about his projects, which are super interesting, about queer people in India as well. With like in between these two sections, we're going to have around a few seconds of a break. So you will see a little bit, we are right back, screen in the middle so we can switch around the technical things in the back. Then I'm going to talk to Francesco for 30 minutes. And after that, I'm going to talk to Cora and Max. They founded the first queer talent agency in Germany, and we're going to talk about their work and queer representation. Once again, between these two switches from Francesco to talking to Cora and Max, we're going to have a little bit of a turnover. It's going to be like 10 seconds with the We're Right Back slide, just so you know. That's all planned. It's not technical issues. And yeah, let's jump right in. I'm just going to have a really quick look at the chat. And I already see Sean, Gareth, Sandrine, Brian, Jackie, some familiar faces. That's nice. Makes me feel less alone and not so awkward talking to myself. I already have Gareth asking Pride shoot for who? It's for Adobe, and it's gonna be shown on the website on the banner. And yeah, let's jump right in. First of all, right off the bat, happy Pride Month. June is Pride Month. And we're gonna talk a little bit about why that is in a little bit. But first, since I'm guest and host all at once, I thought I would just introduce myself again, since this is what I would usually ask a guest to introduce themselves. And also to explain a little bit why I'm the person talking about this. So yeah, my name is Sophia. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a Berlin-based photographer. And for the last, let me think, time and space has changed since Corona. For the last 3 years, four kind of, a lot of my work focused on queer representation and bringing more visibility to the community. All of that started around 2018 when I shot my first Pride shoot, which you can see here. Should be, here we go. Yes, you can see now. The first one I did 2018. It was still with 4 people because I couldn't find more. For me, it was always important to photograph people from the community. So it's not just some people that I picked randomly because I think they look cool. It was always important to actually showcase the community itself and always incorporate the rainbow colors in some way, because I felt like that was the most visible connection that people have to Pride, even if they're not from the community. So for me, this was always important so that people could right away see what the shoot was about. And so that moved on to the second Pride shoot I did in 2020, which was part of the Adobe Residency Fund. And once again, people from the community in the colors of the rainbow. And we're going to talk about why the rainbow is the symbol for Pride in a little bit, and why I chose to make that the symbol of my Pride shoots as well. So this is what I've been working on. I shot this year's Pride shoot as well, which we're going to reveal in a few minutes, or like by the end of my monologue. And yeah, this is kind of the journey. And I think I wanted to use this opportunity to talk about why we celebrate Pride and why we celebrate it in June, because I also gave people the option to ask some questions on social media yesterday. And one question that came up over and over was like, why do we celebrate Pride, and why do we celebrate it in June? So I wanted to give a little bit of a historical background so we all know why we're doing this. And let's go. So why we celebrate Pride in June is pretty much because in 1969, in June, the Stonewall riots happened. The Stonewall Inn was a bar in Manhattan, New York, is still a bar in Manhattan, New York. And before that time, queer people, gay people were criminalized all throughout the US, in the UK and Germany as well. So it was illegal, for example, to wear multiple pieces of the other gender's clothes. It was illegal to show public affection between two queer people. And it was common practice that the police came and shut down gay bars, queer and gay bars. And the Stonewall Inn was known for being a hotspot where people, like queer people, met and partied at night. And so the police came by regularly to shut down the place, to arrest people. And in the night from the 28th of June, for the first time, people fought back. So you have to imagine the police comes in, tries to shut down the place, and for the first time, people didn't just let it happen, but protested against. And that's how the Stonewall riots happened. So it's not 100% clear who started the riots. There are a lot of speculations around it, but it's very clear that Black trans women were involved in that. So it's, I think, really important to remember that and keep that in mind. Two names that always pop up that are important are Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. If you want to read more about that, I would highly recommend looking these two women up. And so, yeah, that's why we celebrate Pride in June, because these riots were a turning point in queer history, where for the first time, queer people started to stand up, and that led to marches all throughout the US, nationwide, and also marches throughout Europe. Later on, it spread in the UK and in Germany as well. So this is a little bit of why we celebrate Pride in June. I hope that was, I'm just looking at the chat. I'm really bad at multitasking. So I really hope, first of all, this was informative. And if you have any questions, please let me know. And now I'm just gonna have a look if there are any questions about that already. I don't think, I just see that Dorina says we need more people in Bulgaria to hear this history lesson. Yes, I agree. I don't want to make this too political, but the reason why we still celebrate Pride today and we should still stand up for queer rights is obviously because there are a lot of places in the world where queer identities are not respected. And so it's still an important issue today. More about that later. So now that we know why we celebrate Pride in June, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the rainbow flag because that has been such a big part of the photos that I've taken for Pride. And I also think it's kind of an interesting story how it happened. And so, funny enough, just want to talk about the font that I'm using real quick because the man that originated the rainbow flag is called Gilbert Baker. And the font that I'm using is called Gilbert because it's like based off him or was created for him in memory of him. It's an Adobe font. Don't want to, it's not advertisement, but it's an Adobe font. And I thought that was really cool. So the rainbow flag became the symbol for gay liberation, the gay, like queer movement in the 1970s. Up until that point, a pink triangle was the sign for the protests because going back to Second World War and Nazi times when especially gay men had to wear a pink triangle to identify them. And they used that up until the 1970s. But a man named Harvey Milk, who was also the first out politician in the US, thought that that was not accurate anymore. He didn't want the movement to be associated with such a dark time, place and time. So he asked Gilbert Baker to design basically a new logo, we would say probably today, a new symbol for the movement. And it's not 100% clear again if it was inspired by the hippie movement that was going on at the time, because they had like a flag of the races that also had kind of a rainbow look, the peace flag as we know it now, or by Judy Garland and her song Over the Rainbow, because actually Judy Garland had just died on the night of Stonewall and turned into a gay icon. So it's not clear exactly why he decided the rainbow flag was a good idea, but that's what happened. And originally, the rainbow flag not just had 6 colors, but 8. So the colors in the beginning were hot pink, so super bright pink, red, orange, yellow, green, turquoise, indigo, and purple. So we had 2 more colors than we have right now. And how did we end up just having 6 colors instead of 8 is pretty simple. In the beginning, they realized that the hot pink was really hard to dye the fabric. So it was a lot of work. And so they stopped using the hot pink as a color. So that was cut out. So we were left with 7 colors. And after that, they wanted to organize a parade, I think in 1972. And so they wanted to split the flag into even numbers. They wanted to have 3 colors on one side and 3 colors on the other side. So basically, they kicked out turquoise, and we ended up with the colors that we have today. So it's a very practical reason why we have 6 colors in the rainbow flag. And another thing that I think is that people don't know about it is that every color has its own meaning. So red is for life, orange is for healing, yellow for sunlight, green for nature, blue for serenity, and purple for spirit. So those are the meanings behind the flag, and the colors should also represent the diversity of the community, and it has become this universal sign for pride and gay liberation, basically. Okay, once again, I have to look to the chat. And I see one question. Gareth asks, there are variations on the pride flag now. Yes, that is true. The pride flag has evolved over the time. This is basically like the stripped down version. There have been a lot of other versions that also include the trans flag, that include people of color. It has changed over the years, and I'm hoping it will still continue to change with, so it's more inclusive to everyone. Yeah, and Sandrine says, I think Gilbert's aim making the flag that the design would remain free for everyone to use. That's also true. It's also incredibly easy to reproduce the fabric. And yes, it was also a design that's kind of easy to do, easy to work with, so that everyone could use it. That was also an aim, and I think successfully so. So this is kind of the rundown why we have the pride flag. And if there are any more questions in the chat, please let me know, because if not, we can have a look a little bit at this year's behind the scene of the Pride shoot before I show you the final images. So, any more questions from anyone? No? Then I would say let's watch a bit of behind the scenes of this year's Pride shoot. Okay, and we're back. I apparently missed one question because it was a little bit further up. The question about when queer became mainstream. And I think it's really hard to answer that. I don't think, because I don't necessarily agree that it is mainstream, and it should never be like a trend or something that is, something trendy. We're going to talk a little bit about pinkwashing and if queer is actually becoming mainstream later on, so stick around for that. And yeah, now I wanted to show you this year's Pride images. Here they are. It's two of them. Once again, you can see the rainbow flag. This year, the focus was a little bit more dynamic. If you look at the other shoots I've done, they have been a bit more static. And this year I really wanted to show movement going forward and showing joy. And also when we look at the fashion, we tried to have a little bit of a reference to the 70s, the 60s and 70s, when Stonewall actually happened. So this year's Pride shoot, I hope, is like the next step if we look at all the other shoots that I've done in the past. And going forward, because I always think a little bit, what would I ask a guest? Since I'm guest and host at the same time, I'm just going to ask myself the questions. The hopes for the future and what are we going to do looking forward? For me, it's really important that queer stories are told by queer people, and queer perspectives are shown in an authentic way and not stereotypical ways that what people think queer people look like. My dream and goal would be which is very far in the future, I think that it's just not an issue anymore, that it's not something that we have to point out, that it's not something that people have to come out. Also, for example, normalizing that we say our pronouns, that we just are more respectful towards everyone around us. And I'm hoping that by working with the queer community and showcasing queer identities, that people realize and see that these are just really normal, beautiful human beings. There's nothing different about queer people. So that is the goal for the future. I'm hoping to achieve that at some point. And obviously, I'm going to produce more Pride shoots every year. So hopefully you'll stick around and you will see the rest of all the Pride shoots that are going to come up. I hope this was informative. Let me know. Once again, if you have any more questions, you can also send me some questions on social media. If there's anything, I'm always happy to connect with people. I'm just gonna have one last look if I forgot any questions here, because if not, we can move to the next section so we don't have to rush through anything. And then I'm going to introduce Francesco. So we will be back in like a few seconds, basically. And we're going to have Francesco here, and he's going to talk about his projects. So stay with us, and we will be right back. As you can see, I'm not alone anymore. I'm joined by Francesco. He is a photographer from Munich, but I'm just gonna let him introduce himself real quick because he's probably doing a way better job than I am. So take it away, introduce yourself.
Hi, Sophia. Thanks for having me. My name is Francesco. My pronouns are he, him. And I'm working as a freelance photographer living in Munich. That's in the south of Germany. And my work is focused on the one side on still lifes and architecture, but I'm also doing portrait projects in the fields of queer topics as well.
Because we connected also through Adobe and the residency program, because I saw that you also had a queer project, and I know you have been working with queer individuals, or like portraits of queer individuals, for a long time. And I really wanted to know how that started and why you decided to make that the focus of your work.
It all started in year 2018. The first project I did was a small project together with a dancing group, and they prepared for Gay Pride in Munich. And through this group, I got to know many more people. And one group was the Rainbow Refugees in Munich. These are queer refugees who are living in Munich and the area and left their home countries because of their identity and sexual orientation. And the first thing I did was a small portrait session on an evening. I took portraits of around 27 LGBT refugees. And this project got bigger after this. I included 30 more photographers and around 25 journalists. And now we can switch to the website. We collected and wrote down 27 stories of LGBT refugees and took portraits. And if you go up, you can click on menu.
Yes.
We have some of the stories on the website. Exactly. I took the portraits of Edward. Maybe we can click on this.
Yes.
And go down. And we have around 8 stories on the website. And it's the text and portraits, but we also have interviews with professionals like another journalist. You can also click on menu, and they are the experts. Yeah, exactly. We talked with a lawyer and someone who's organizing an LGBT housing, and I think you can get a good overview on this website, but we also published a magazine.
I have a question, even though it's a spontaneous one, so it's not prepared, but I have one question. What do you think you learned from taking photos of queer refugees? What was your personal experience with that?
It was really a good experience. I learned to interact more with the persons. I guess teamwork is something very important when you take pictures of someone, and also giving the feeling of being included. We also had events afterwards and the release event, and for me it was always important to have everyone included, especially the refugees. And we also had a kind of talk show organized and by themselves. And they talked about the experiences in their home countries, but also about the experiences they have in Germany now. And this was really important for me, to let them speak, to give them a voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of, does it make you feel a little bit like grateful? Because I feel like sometimes we forget, or I tend to forget, especially living in Berlin, and it's a kind of a queer bubble. Where I kind of assume everyone's open-minded, that I tend to forget sometimes that there are obviously, first of all, other countries where it's the complete opposite, and even just other parts of Germany, like small towns, that it's very humbling to realize that, and I'm extremely grateful to be living in a city where I can just be openly myself.
Yeah, I'm also grateful, and I never did some bad experiences being myself.
Yeah.
So when I got to know all these stories, it was really inspiring too. And yeah, it's just nice also to have them here now.
Yeah.
Living and being themselves without having any problems.
Yeah. No, I really like that project, and I know you have another one, but the next question I wanted to ask you is, what is your process behind working with the queer community, and what motivates you to do that work?
On the one side, it is getting inspired by people, by personality, and especially from the queer community, and also having the feeling of being an inspiration for others, maybe. And I guess we can switch to the other project, because every project is kind of different, depending on the progress and the process. And maybe I can explain a bit what we did in the second project. Yes. It was end of 2019 when me and another photographer, her name is Gina, and Stephanie and Maria, 2 journalists, we decided to fly to India 1 year after the Section 377 has banned. It was a section which criminalized being part of the LGBT community, being queer,
Mm-hmm.
but this ended, fortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And we met people 1 year after this, and also took portraits and talked with them.
Yeah.
And the journey was really good and very inspiring too. I guess we can click on the video to get a better insight of.
Hi, I'm Naveen Narona. I'm 28. I'm from Mumbai, India, and I am a homosexual. Hello?
Hi.
My name is Pami.
Let's talk about sex, identity, gender, love, life, and freedom. This is India's queer community.
I identify myself as gay.
As a gay male. As a non-binary queer person.
Gay man.
Gay.
Gay. Queer.
Bisexual.
What does being queer mean?
Being queer means, for me, it's living with a lot of dignity and respect.
It's like something where you can be yourself.
Fun.
It's not completely positive.
Well, in India, being a transgender is inspiring.
It takes a lot of courage.
It means that I can be whoever I want to be.
It doesn't matter what gender you belong to. At the end of the day, you're human.
Being queer in India is being part of the large minority.
Isolated but also unique.
Happy discrimination.
Have you heard of Section 377?
Firstly, 377 was a law which decriminalized homosexual activity.
Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code was used to prosecute and criminalize queer people for over 100 years. It censored private lives and was a source of fear and threat to the LGBTIQ community. On September 6th, 2018, Section 377 has been revoked. So what did change?
So after 377 decriminalized,
Let's find out together. 377, inside India's queer community.
That's goes really deep into the heart. That's really amazing. Do you actually know what they had to do so the 377 was revoked? Like, were there protests before? What was the story behind that process?
I can't remember right now. I guess there was something in the I don't know, sorry.
No, absolutely no problem. No, I think it's just so important to just like we talked about before. It's so humbling to see that obviously there are other countries where it's just been 2018 where it was for the first like decriminalized to be queer. Keeping that in mind, thinking like I think we think a lot of times we've come so far. We're already very into the future, but obviously there are other countries where that is not the case yet.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about your experiences in India? Is there one thing that maybe sticks out for you, or some like one or two things that you remember very clearly, or a person or what they said?
Yeah, it was the first contact I had was with Johan. It's the first person on the left. And I contacted him in Germany through Facebook. And when we got to Mumbai, it was really easy to get to know the other people. He connected us with many more, and it was really humbling that he helped us so much. And he also liked our ideas and our plan. And Mumbai is really stressful. But it was really good time there. We got to know so many inspiring people, and met around 3-4 people per day, and did some meditation classes in the evening with Johan to survive this trip. Yeah, it was really inspiring and a good time, and to get to know all the stories of the people, and they were trustful with us.
Yeah. And talking of the process again, how did you approach people? How did you find all of these people? Did they want to tell their stories? Were they eager to show who they were, who they are now? Like how did you experience this time in India and this project in general?
As I said, it was really easy for us. I guess maybe also because I'm part of the LGBT community myself. And the people we met, they were very eager to tell their stories and to help us, also to get to know others again. And yeah.
That's amazing.
It was easier than I expected, I must confess.
Yeah, because I kind of assume maybe people are a bit like, I don't know, not that, I don't want to say outspoken, but like after this has been criminalized for so long. But I also understand, obviously, you then want to show yourself since you can do it now. So you've been hiding for so long, so you're eager to show your identity and yourself. So it does make sense. And I know that you have a book. This was turned into a book. This is the book I have.
Both of the projects are turned into a book. I could show you the book, but maybe
I have it here, but I can't reach it. I actually did not prepare well enough. I was like, I have it here.
Just 1 second, I have it here. So this is the book we made for this project.
Yes, that's the book I have.
And yeah, there are many more pictures than on the website.
Yes.
And we are also having an exhibition in Munich during the Gay Pride.
Which is when in Munich?
10th and 11th of July.
And where is it? So if people are in Munich, maybe they can, I mean, I know it's a UK stream, but you never know. Maybe there's some UK
Maybe
people.
someone is doing a journey to Munich. Yeah, it's quite in the middle of the city near Sendlinger Tor.
Nice. So if you're in Munich, go check it out. The next question I have is, since you also work with queer representation and you do I think you take extremely authentic portraits. So what does accurate representation look like to you? What do you think is important when as a photographer, you showcase the queer community?
On the one side, it is avoiding stereotypes, like you said before. I think this is very important. Showing the people in their authentic way, where they live, what they do also. And for me, it is always important to have kind of teamwork and inclusivity, so that they also have to have like a decision how they want to be represented.
Yeah.
How they want to be shown also.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say inclusivity is, for me, it is the most important thing in everything I'm doing in this project. It's like also how the book is looking at the end and how the events are.
Yeah. Jackie is asking in the chat where we can find your work. And I think maybe Tim can drop the 2 links into the chat. I'm hoping he can do that, because otherwise you can see maybe you can see it at the top.
But it's very long.
It's very long, that's true. I completely agree, because I think for me the main key about working with the queer communities is communication, like talking to the people, listening to their stories, especially if you're the one you're not just the tool that tells the story. So just to be aware of that and to listen to what people have to say. And I think it's really amazing that you include everyone throughout the whole process, not just the photo itself, but the events that happen, what the book looks like, and not decide over people's heads, basically.
Yeah, the opinion of themselves is very important for me too.
Yeah.
Also, when we started to create the website, I have sent it to some of them.
Yeah.
And got the opinion. In the first place, we had like a yellowish bar and it reminded of like a political party in India. Now I changed to white.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important because sometimes you don't think about certain things because
Yeah.
it's not your reality. So you just don't have these things in mind.
Yeah.
I think that's specifically the reason why it's important to listen to everyone involved and have a conversation, like honest conversations, open conversations about identity and representation. And the next question I would have is that how did that shape your perspective? What has changed for you personally in regards of your work? What impact did that have in the past and also for the future?
Yeah, good question. Yes,
Very long question. I just realized it was a mouthful.
I am gay myself, yes, but I have not felt included before. Now I'm very included in the LGBT community in Munich. And I guess this is because I started this project too. So I gave something and I'm getting something back. As I said before, it is about getting inspired also, getting to know more people also from the LGBT community, but also being inspiration for others to do projects like this too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say now I'm very part of Munich's community, yeah.
Yeah. Has that, for your future work, is that changing what you want to do in the future? Because you have done these 2 projects. Is this a path you want to continue on?
Yeah, it is. But these projects are more like hard projects.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I can speak also for you. It is also important to earn your money somehow.
Yeah.
These projects are also very important to be happy too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and that's also an important issue of like when, and that's, I think, one of the questions that got asked before about the mainstream question, is the queer community becoming mainstream or is it becoming more commercial? And I guess we can see some of that happening, and I'm gonna ask that question to Cora and Max later as well, but like, when is it okay to make money with doing what we do, like representing the queer community, or is it better if these projects just stay projects that are dear to our hearts and that we want to do out of the belief that they have to happen regardless of if they're sponsored by a brand or if we're being paid for them? So what's your take on that? For you, it's very separated in the sense of like my queer projects and the stuff that I do for the community is strictly personal. It's stuff that I do because I believe in it. And my other work is the work that I make a living with. That's still life photography and all the other stuff that I do, but it's different, 2 separated things. So how do you see that?
For me, it is separated until now, but it could be also a good way to get money for the process too. But for example, this project, it was also important for me to, when we sold these books, that part of the crowdfunding is going back to India and the people we met there.
Yeah.
We paid the whole production, but part of the money we got is also going back to the groups we met and people who helped us to get to know more there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is separated for me.
Yeah. Do you think, would you like to keep it that way? Like, is that just how you want to continue working, or how do you see yourself like working in the future when it comes to your projects?
Good question. I can imagine like sometimes it is just a hard project, but I can also imagine to get paid for queer projects too. Let's see. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always torn between. Yeah. Like it's a tricky question, obviously.
And it is also depending on the brand, which is asking.
Yeah, of course. It's absolutely it depends on who you're gonna work with, how they treat your project and you as an artist. So it's not really a black and white question or answer in that sense. So
yeah, it's also very important to have a look how they are treating the LGBT topic outside the month of June.
Yes.
To see if they are interacting also and funds and so on. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. What I wanted to ask you is also, what are your hopes for the future? Like we talked about your project, and I think the project in India is so impactful, and I hope a lot of people see that and read these stories, because I find them extremely inspirational. But what does your ideal future look like when you think about queer people and queer representation and how people are seen in the world?
I think it is very important to start thinking more globally, not just being focused on Munich's LGBT community, for example, or Germany, but also to see, for example, in direction of Hungary, what is happening there now. And I guess we will have many more gay prides and LGBT Pride Month until this is changing there too. And we have problems in Europe, but when you look more far, like the Rainbow Refugees project, there are problems in Africa, for example, in Tanzania and Uganda. And yeah, I think it's very important to think more globally and show the problems there too.
Yes.
And having discussions worldwide, not just here.
Yeah.
And another important point is to include other parts of the LGBT community, for example, the trans community, more.
Yeah, I think like intersectionality is really important, just to keep that in mind, not just look at things from one perspective, but to include everyone, listen to everyone. Yeah. And like you said, I think it's a really important point to look at it on a global scale. Because like I said, I forget sometimes how lucky I am to be living here and have all the privileges that I have here. So I think that's important to keep in mind for the future. And once again, what's your like ideal? When we look in like 10 years, what's your hopes and dreams for in 10 years?
Gay Pride all the year.
Happy Pride every day.
Happy Pride every day, and everyone is living and loving freely and happily.
Yeah.
Without getting any problems with discrimination outside.
Yeah. I think that's a good plan for the future. And I think that's a good way of ending our little chat, because I think we're almost done with this section. Thank you so much for sharing your projects, because I think everyone should have a look and check them out. And is there any other project that people should have a look? I think they should have a look at your website and your Instagram, or how can people connect with you?
Yeah, I think Instagram is quite good because I'm also having like smaller projects and portraits of queer people I'm doing regularly.
Okay,
So
amazing.
Instagram is fine.
Maybe Tim is gonna drop your Instagram in the chat. I think he can do that. Francesco, thank you so much. I can't wait to see what you're gonna do next. Once again, if anyone is in Munich during Pride, go check out the exhibition. Check out the interviews in the India's Queer Community Project. And yeah, we will be right back after like a teeny tiny break again. And we're gonna talk to Cora and Max from Uns, the first queer talent agency in Germany, about queer representation. So don't go away. We're gonna be right back.
Thank you.
And I kind of realized that I went from being alone, being with one person, with two people. And I'm joined by Max and Cora from Uns. And how about you introduce yourselves real quick? Because I think that might be the easiest way. Who wants to go first?
Max, you want to start off?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So good to be here. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Max. My pronouns are they or he. I started off being a model, and since last November, I am one of the co-founders of Germany's first LGBTQI+ talent agency called Uns. I founded this agency together with Cora Hamilton, who is here as well. You want to continue, Cora?
Oh, is this my cue? Yeah, nice. Thanks, Max. Yeah, so as Max just said, Max is a model. I'm a photographer, and we met about a year and a half ago for a shoot for a project that I was working on of queer people in Berlin. And we had a little vegan ice cream afterwards, and we got chatting about what we wanted to do with our careers, kind of the state of the industries that we wanted to enter. Max is a model and me as an aspiring fashion photographer. And we had a lot of common experiences and opinions about going into an industry that we just find so deeply flawed and so deeply problematic, and has been ever since its very beginning, you know, in all sorts of ways, in terms of racism, homophobia, transphobia, fat phobia, ableism. And we just bonded over the fact that we can't enter an industry like this as the people that we are. You know, we're like, we sit almost top of the privilege pile in a lot of intersections of the LGBTQI+ community, but still these spaces are unsafe for us. So with Uns, the whole idea was to carve out a space for us and our people to make our way into this industry and set fire to it from the inside, and really, you know, start afresh and build it as it can and should be, which is deeply and properly and truly inclusive and diverse.
Yeah, you kind of already answered my first question that I have on my
You're welcome.
On my well-prepared
I'm just saving you a job,
sheet that I
Sophia.
have.
It's all right.
Yeah. Like, great. So let's check that off the list, because my first question was, how did you start the agency?
I knew it was coming.
Yeah, you kind of anticipated all of it. So what I really wanted to talk to you about is, you said you wanted to set fire to the industry from the inside, which I think is a really good quote. We could print that on stickers. How do you do that? How can we make that happen? What is needed? And what's the plan basically? What can we all do? How can we participate in that setting fire movement basically?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like a silly phrase that we use because I've been involved, especially like in a lot of activist circles, especially in Berlin, and it very much a lot of the time felt like throwing fire from the outside, you know, and Max and I were always saying to each other, like, how effective can that really be? In some areas that it's just what has to be done, but in something that's so flawed on every level of the industry, it's really about, we often joke about Trojan horsing our way in there, you know, like we have our networks and our connections, we make our way in there and we rebuild it as it should be. And obviously this sounds like very ambitious, but we're a bunch of ambitious people, you know, you have to be when the whole world is telling you you're not valid in your existence and spitting you on the street. And that's a very small example of the stuff that we go through, especially as business owners now, as two queer non-binary business owners driving a roster of LGBTQI plus people from every intersection, and with so many disadvantages in the society that we exist in, you know?
Yeah.
But Max, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I think maybe, exactly what Cora said. Maybe just like from my perspective as a model, I've been like trying to really get, you know, like proper castings, proper bookings on my own. For me, it was really difficult to find someone. Like I started researching modeling agencies a couple of years ago because I thought I want to be a bit more, you know, professional, have someone who's representing me. But it was just like a couple of years ago, there was no talent agency that was like kind of saying that they work with LGBTQ plus people or with queer people. A couple of years later, there was a talent agency that like popped up in the US, but it's not helping me when I'm in Berlin that there is a talent agency in the US. So I try to do it like on my own, but I feel like it's basically impossible to get like work done, be also taken seriously. And I had like no protection behind me. If something went wrong, I kind of had to deal with it on my own. And I think as now that we founded the company, we already see that there comes like so much, in a way, like privilege in us, you know, like we're very much seen on differently by like clients because we're a company, we're an agency, and we're really trying our best to use that privilege in order to, on one hand side, like source jobs, but also on the other hand side, to make sure that the jobs go okay and that our talent is protected. Yeah.
That also kind of already almost answered my second question. This is going smoothly.
Nice. You can just sit back, Sophia. We got it.
As if I had sent them over before. The second, because I was wondering, how were you perceived? Because I know you're a young agency, and like you said, you started it in November 2020, right? October, November 2020. Mm-hmm. So you have not been around for that long, but how has the industry like accepted you? What are your experiences so far?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think we're super young. We're only since the end of last year we've been properly active, and also it's important to note that we always say to talent that we onboard that we're not coming into this as people who have existed in the modeling industry or creative industries for a long time. We both have our different backgrounds. Max has a background in art history. I have a background in music and teaching. And so we're not coming into this with like a book full of contacts. We're not coming in here like, oh, you want a model for Gucci? Hi, Gucci, we got a model for you, you know? Mm-hmm. It's totally, what's the German phrase, Max? Like to spring out of cold water or into cold water. I can't remember.
Ja, how do you say
Wasser springen.
Ja, genau.
Yeah.
To jump into cold, I think to be pushed in cold water. I think I would translate it too.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was going to say we chose this, but actually, no, we had to create this. We just felt such like this sense of duty that we had to do this now, because there is so much talent at every intersection of the community, and it's going unnoticed because, for example, like Black trans women who have been trying to enter any kind of modeling industry, creative industry, are just not given the chances, anywhere near the amount of chances that even people like Max and I, non-binary queer people, that we're handed, you know? And this is the whole reason we're doing this, to really like drive this. And exactly like Max was saying, when we're behind a company name, we're immediately taken more seriously. Where was I going to go with this? Can you remind me what your question was, Sophia? Because I had
question was like
say.
How you're perceived in the industry. How has the beginning of
the response to us? Yeah, of course. Just quickly, I'll add something, Max, and then you go ahead. But what I was going to say is that it's very half and half, because when we started, we obviously had these huge expectations and ambitions because we knew that this was so desperately needed. We knew that we were the first in Germany and one of the first in the world. Like there was literally a handful when we started in the world. And now a few more have sprung up. So we knew that it was needed, and we knew that people were looking, that people in the modeling and creative industries and fashion industries were looking where they can find trans talent, where they can find non-binary talent. And because they're not in these communities, they just didn't know where to go. Like we saw Facebook adverts for like big Netflix dramas that were looking for trans actors for trans characters, and they had no idea where to look. So it was immediately, we knew we were going to be like well responded to. But then on the other hand, we've encountered a lot of well-meaning people, clients, companies, that they think, oh, I don't mind gay people, so this will be fine. Like I can work with you. And then there comes the misgendering, and then there comes the problematic language, and the complete inability to adapt and learn because of a damaged ego. Basically, this is like, I'm really going for them here, but not anyone in particular.
Take it away.
You know, it's just like a few times we've had that. A few times there's been like pretty extreme versions of that, which is super upsetting, just because I always say, like, if we were just an e-scooter company and you came to us and said, oh, this isn't needed, why are you doing this? Like, no one wants this business. We'd be like, yeah, fair play. Don't need another e-scooter company. But when it's so intrinsically and inherently tied to us as humans, our basic identities, and therefore everyone who we work with and that we sign, it's so, you know, these kind of criticisms are like, I don't think you as a person should exist, not just you as a company. You know? Sorry, Max, I've been chatting for ages. You go ahead, because you've got something to say as well.
I think I'm just like basically trying to pick up on what you said. It's like, I think the experiences with the client, with the people, let's say, that we encountered in general, because it's not only clients that you encounter or people who turn into clients. Like on a client level, I have to say I personally have been quite happy with what happened so far. And it's almost like I'm super pleased with the people who are actually genuinely interested in working with us, that they're interested in not only being like, oh, I want this one model for this one occasion. There is more of a like, hey, how can we do this like properly? And I'm really happy about that. However, like there are still some people that, like, let's say we encounter that are like, oh yeah, we want an LGBTQI plus talent. But then at some point, like you start the communication and you notice that they're not serious about it. They're not serious about proper inclusion of someone. They're just serious about basically having this pin on their website or this pin on their badge being like, we use a trans model, for example. And this is when it gets very like almost frustrating for me personally, because I feel like you cannot just be like, oh, I want to create this concept, let's say, that is like for cis people, by cis people, and then I just like pick a trans talent in order to look like inclusive and everything, and then add them into the cast, for example, without really thinking that it's not like inclusion does not only mean to have someone in front of the camera, but to understand the reality in order like to adapt like the concept, for example, to adapt communication. This is quite important. And I think these are like the two kind of people who we have encountered. There was a lot of like positive feedback in a certain way. And of people who genuinely care, who are genuinely interested in working and in working together in order to create like a better environment, more inclusive environment. But on the other hand side, you have these people who like jump in and who are like, yeah, that's really cool. But in the moment that you start telling them what the work actually is, they get like really rejective and are like, oh no, then this is too complicated. I'm really sorry. Goodbye. And yeah, I think.
Yeah. Just real quick too, if people don't know what the word cis means.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't know if everyone knows that. Like cis means you identify as the gender you were assigned at birth. Just if people were wondering what that term meant, because I don't know if everyone here knows that term. But that kind of ties in a little bit with the question that was asked really in the beginning that I kind of postponed until now. The question of, is the queer community becoming mainstream? Is it becoming something that is getting more attention for the wrong reasons maybe as well? Like, because you also said when you started, and that's not really long ago, there were not a lot of queer talent agencies, and now there are more, and there has been a bigger request for projects that are more inclusive. So why do you think that is happening? And do you think the queer community is becoming mainstream? And if so, is that a good or a bad thing?
I think I'm not a fan of talking about the queer community as becoming mainstream, just because from my perspective, it's a group of people who are marginalized by this society, and therefore, if this group of people are going to become mainstream, then they're being exploited. You know, that's like a direct equivalent in my head. And I think the people that, if we're talking about kind of pink washing, which is the exploitation of LGBTQI plus people for money, especially by big, large corporations that have no true intentions of actually benefiting these people, where was I going? In this sense, the people from the LGBTQI plus communities that are profiting the most from this are the people that are on the top of the privilege pile, and that is the white cis gays, basically. And this is fantastic, and there is a lot of representation. There's a lot now. It's even for white cis gay people, it's still all like very, very often questionable representation, but there's a lot of it. And therefore that gives this very specific group of people the power in themselves to live as themselves, live as their true selves, you know? But then in terms of other representation, for example, I'm going to use the example of the German crime show that had a transgender woman as a character who they just painted in a horrific light. And so, you know, we're looking at representation like, oh, that's great, there's a trans character. So that trans people can watch that and be like, I can see myself. But in this case, not only are they using this as a pink washing tactic and a tokenist tactic, but they're also using this to further taint the picture that the general population has of trans people. And so that's why when we as an agency talk about true and authentic representation, we're talking about representing marginalized groups of people as they want to be seen. You were talking about this earlier, telling their stories as they want to be told, which is so important to us. And yeah, I think, Max, do you want to carry on from this?
Yeah, thanks. I think just what is, like, for me, what was important also to understand with this question is, I definitely would say no, like, queerness is not becoming mainstream, because it's what is basically becoming mainstream is certain parts that belong to the LGBTQI plus communities, which queerness is part of, but not exclusively. And they're like extracted and put into a commercial context. And the issue is these are the things that are becoming mainstream, but the essence and the core, also the issues in a certain way of the LGBTQI plus communities are still staying invisible while we're extracting only the parts that we think in a certain way are palatable and like worth to be seen. I think this is maybe just to sum it up. I hope that makes it understandable.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I do think that a lot of people, if we talk about, and I just use queer as an umbrella term, but that people just have a very either stereotypical way or image in their heads, or kind of worst case scenario, just think of a, let's say, cis white gay men couple. Of like as this part of that community, and that's then, well, that's accepted and we see it everywhere, so it's all good kind of argumentation, which obviously is not the case. So because I also struggle with, I do see that it is getting better. I do see that there is more representation. Is it good representation? Often case, I don't think so, because it's still feeding into stereotypes. But on the other hand, I do see that it is improving. And that's also kind of part of the question. Why do you think it is improving, and what can we do so it does improve even more? Because we have come, if we look back, I mean, just talking about India and other countries where it had, like, it was a crime until 3 years ago to be openly queer and gay, that we have come quite far already. But how can we continue to keep going, and what can we do? And what can also maybe people with bigger platforms, corporations, what can they do? And I think that was a really long question. I hope it's clear what I want. Where I want to go.
I think just off the top of my head, I can think of two main reasons why representation is improving as it is. And I think the first one is that corporations and large companies know that if they don't keep up with the demand that people want to see real, true, diverse representation in all forms of media, if they don't keep up with that, they know they're going to fall behind. They know they're going to be left behind. We're at a point where, and this is massively due to not only the Black Lives Matter movement really ramping up after the murder of George Floyd around this time last year, but also the pandemic and everything switching to online, and everyone having a voice that counts online, which is often can lead to a lot of issues, but in this way it's excellent. So I think that's one of the main reasons that corporations know they need to keep up. But also I think the other one is that LGBTQA people, and this is kind of like a self-perpetuating circle, the better representation there is, the more people like us can see ourselves in positions that we aspire to be in, careers that we aspire to be in, and therefore having more of an opportunity to enter the careers that we aspire to be in. Therefore, we are everywhere. You know, we have always been everywhere. This is the thing. Yes. LGBTQA plus people have always been everywhere and have always been erased. And by white supremacy, have always been erased by white supremacy. And now that these structures are starting, the holes are starting to appear, the cracks are starting to form. And those cracks are where we can enter through, you know, and really be in every area of every area, you know, like every department of every corporation, of every organization. And therefore, when we are everywhere and represented everywhere, we can make these changes.
And I think actually, like what you said in the beginning as well, is like you had, like, I mean, I'm just talking for you now, I'm sorry, but like you had to do this, like we create the future that we want to see, which is that's also why I think the work you do is so inspiring, because I think this mindset of, if it's not been done before, then we're just going to do it ourselves is so important, because waiting for an opportunity to come out of thin air is probably not going to help us move forward as fast as we want to go forward. So we're just building the opportunities for ourselves so that nobody has to come and hand them to us.
Yeah.
We're making our own like representation. We're building our own communities. We're building, like you said, we're setting it on fire from the inside.
Yeah.
So do you want to add something, Max?
No, I actually we said what we said, I guess. Yeah, I'm just thinking like in regards to what can we, or like what can bigger corporations do? And I think, in my opinion, we said it already throughout the conversation several times, but just like hire LGBTQI plus creatives to create your campaigns. Like don't hire any sort of, like cis people who then like come up with these amazing ideas. Hire really LGBTQI plus creatives, pay them properly, amplify voices on if you have like an Instagram account, for example, with a lot of followers, amplify voices on Instagram. That is already also helping, and try to like educate yourself, your team as good as possible. And it's an ongoing process. Don't do the work once and be like, cool, I'm done. It's like an ongoing thing. It's on learning is ongoing, unlearning is ongoing. And I think that is very important to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's also an aspect that you just mentioned, is what I see a lot of times is that corporations are like, yeah, we hire everyone. We're really open to hire everyone. But then I'm like, great, but you still have to like educate your already current staff, because you can't just hire people and then they work in an environment that's not safe. So it's like, you can't just be like, yeah, we hire diverse people and not be inclusive in a workspace. So keep that in mind.
Also, I think another issue in that, Sophia, is that companies sometimes don't even hire a diverse mix of employees. They interview a very diverse mix of potential employees, because they have boxes to tick. Of D&I, diversity and inclusivity. They got to tick their quotas, and so they'll interview these people, but then who do you really think they're going to end up hiring, And exactly. This is something that we really hate, is when brands refer to it as D&I. It's like, it's not a tick box. It's a massive concept that is so essential that everyone gets their head around. If you're working in any kind of position of power in any kind of company or organization, it's not a box you have to tick. You really everyone has to have the true intentions there, because if you don't have the true intentions, how the hell are we going to move forward?
And like you said, everyone has to be on the same page. It cannot be that HR decided we gonna hire, let's say, a trans person, but then this person experiences transphobia in a workspace. It's everyone has to be on the same page. And I think that's really, really important. And it's not done by just showing the rainbow flag in June. Obviously.
Absolutely, yeah.
Another question that I have on my really well prepared list, which I kind of think we already answered, but I'm still gonna ask it again because I think it's important again. What does accurate queer LGBTQIA plus representation look like? If we can paint the dream picture of what does it look like to you?
Max, you wanna?
I think, I'm just thinking, what can I say that wasn't said yet in a way? And I mean, again, I think LGBTQI plus representation starts with the LGBTQI plus people decide how they want to be represented, instead of like having a concept that someone came up with that is not linked to the communities, and therefore also not linked to the stories in the communities. I think that is like a first important start, in my opinion. And in an ideal world, of course, as we just said right now, representation is not like a one-term thing that happens this month and then the rest of the month is gone, but it is there like all the time and in all the areas, not only in like a photo that you put on, or that a company puts on their website, but also in the communication, in the language, in in the like internal parts that we as like outsiders, let's say, we might not even see, thinking about what you said earlier about like educating your employees, not only hiring a diverse mix of people in a certain way, but also like making sure that the environment is safe for everyone. And also another thing that I think we haven't really touched on yet is that if you as a company, let's say a brand, you want to include LGBTQI plus individuals in your campaigns and make them visible as LGBTQI plus individuals, that is really great. But you have to be also aware that you cannot just put a photo up, and in case, and it happens on a regular basis, there is any sort of like backlash towards these people, it's often that LGBTQI plus people stand alone with all the hate that they suddenly receive from the outside, and the companies are a bit like, yeah, sorry, we're not like tolerating this, but they're not doing anything to protect like the people that are actually in the campaign and who are actually facing that. So that is also like another really important thing to me, that if you want to represent LGBTQI plus people, you have to think it through on every like step, and you have to really stand behind what you're doing, because otherwise I don't think it's really worth it, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. It just puts people at risk, I think. Like, you know, you just use the LGBTQI community then for your
benefit,
profit, and then if it gets difficult, you're like, oh, that's not my problem.
That's the thing. And this is, visibility is such a big topic and such a word that is thrown around everywhere. But visibility is dangerous if it doesn't come with safety and the promise of safety and the action of making things safe. Visibility is a danger to so many people.
And I think brands have to understand that responsibility as well. Like, you can't just think, oh, it's Pride Month, let's put a rainbow flag on it, and then I've done my duty. It's like, no, if you do that, and if you profit off of that, it comes with a responsibility, and you need to be aware of that, I think, or remind yourself of that constantly, and not back down if it gets difficult, because it's still a long way to go, which kind of is a patting myself on the back. Good transition into my last question that I have is, why do you think it's still important to celebrate Pride today? And once again, the question as well, what do you hope for in the future? Just to wrap it up, I think, as the last question. So why are we still celebrating, and what are you hoping for in the future?
I think Pride is, and I'm speaking from myself as an individual, nothing to do with us as an agency or anyone else from any LGBTQI plus community, but I think I have a bit of a weird relationship with Pride, just because of the massive, like, it just feels so exploitative when it's so mainstream and so, like, for example, the floats at Pride marches are sponsored by weapons traders and banks that destroy entire countries with their massive amount of wealth, you know, and just that being one of the reasons. But also, I think what I've been thinking very recently in this Pride month is I've come to a bit of a realization why I, as an individual, don't connect with Pride as a concept so much. And I think it's because, to me, the rainbow flag doesn't even scratch the surface of my experience as a queer non-binary person. It says nothing about me as a person and my community as a group, and the experiences, both the highest highs and the lowest lows, you know, like living as a queer non-binary person, or as a pansexual person, or as a trans person, as a non-binary person. There is so much depth to every single LGBTQI plus person's experience, and that's dependent on their background, where they come from, or how they've been raised, and their culture, their religion, their physical abilities or physical appearance. And there's just so many things that go into it. And I think because it's been so commodified, I struggle to relate to the concept of Pride as a month, just because we've strayed so far from the origins of it. Like, Pride began as a riot, as a protest, And it is so essential that it remains a riot and a protest, you know, and rioting now and protesting doesn't need to be thousands of people in the streets. The pandemic has taught us that you can achieve so much online and so much in your own communities. It doesn't, you know, we don't need, things have moved so much since Stonewall in so many different ways. It doesn't need to be the queers at a bar throwing bricks anymore, you know, like that amazing feat of resistance happened. And now, several decades in the future, we need to find the equivalent of what those bricks are now, you know. And I think that's I'm really, this, yeah, quote me on this, is a good one. But like, you know, and this agency is like our bricks, you know. This is like, we're desperately grasping for how do we put an end to this monumental suffering that our communities go through? How do we put an end to this? And our brick is uns, you know. That's how we're existing, and that's how we're striving towards the future that we think should exist. Yeah.
Do you want to add anything, Max?
I found it, I mean, yes, of course. I found it really beautiful what you said, Cora.
Yes.
Thank you so much. But I'm also like really relating to this feeling of like, pride for me was something very essential, especially like in the beginning when I came out, as queer, let's say, in general. It was like very necessary for me in order to like have a space where it is almost like it is okay, and it's even more than only okay, like to be who I am. That was very essential for me. But in the last couple of years, I've also kind of refrained a little bit, especially like from what is visible as what is pride, and rather like kind of go back into myself, remember like, where is this coming from? What is the work that has to be done still? And also, what is my duty as for example, as a white person in this whole, as a queer person, but also as a white person with all the privilege that I have, in order to, you know, support I'm refraining a bit from saying the movement, but in a way the movement. So I think that is what Pride Month is for. I mean, it is a work that is like constantly ongoing, not once a year in June I'm like, what are my privileges? But I think it's an ongoing process, and therefore I would not like to like pin it to a month and be like, now I'm especially aware, or now I'm especially proud. I'm trying to be proud like all over the year. I'm trying to be like visible all over the year with whatever it like may take. I'm trying to support all over to the year. So yeah.
No, that is honestly super inspiring and powerful, and I love we're gonna throw some bricks in our own way. The 2021 version of a brick in 1969. And I think that's also a very good ending to our little talk, because I think everyone has to reflect on where they are in their lives, the privileges they have, even bigger corporates, they especially. And just Pride is not just 1 month. Pride should be all year long. And thank you so much for being here today and talking to me.
Thank you.
I hope I'm going to talk to you too soon anyway. And I'm just gonna say bye to the community. Thank you everyone for sticking around and watching this special masterclass, kind of a different masterclass, but I hope everyone could take something away from that. And on that note, I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day. We're back on Friday with another stream, so tune back in and have a great Wednesday. Bye, everyone.
I